All right, let's go ahead and get started. The recording is on, so I'm gonna go ahead and call this work session to order on AR 2021-25, Heritage Land Bank Work Program and 5-Year Management Plan. Let's start with a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
And Ms. Zalatel.
Here.
Thank you. All right, so as usual, if members want to get in the queue, please put yourself in the chat or text me if you can't access the chat. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the administration for the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair Rivera and Assembly members. This is Robin Ward. I am the Real Estate Director and the Executive Director of the Heritage Land Bank for the municipality. It's become a bit of a standard now to have a work session prior to the adoption of our plan. So that's why we're here today. This gives you an opportunity to see some highlights of what is in the plan and be able to ask questions and make comments. So we'll get started right away and we will go through, this is a fairly short presentation, so we'll go through the presentation and then we'll open it up for questions. So I have Shelley Roughton running the program today. So Shelley, could you go to the next slide? Our plan is made up of several different chapters. One is our accomplishments. We do disposals of property if it is deemed to be surplus to municipal needs each year. In 2020, we sold the larger of the, or shall I say, the parcel in Carroll Creek that allows the most density. That was rezoned and sold along with a bird parcel, 2.5 acre parcel that we'd actually had on the market for quite a long time, and we were able to complete both of those sales. The donation of the Wold property, this was a parcel in Potter Marsh that was taken in tax foreclosure deed. We were able to work with the state of Alaska, DNR, transfer that as a donation, and it is now being managed by Fish and Game in the Anchorage Coastal Wildlife Refuge. They had tried to buy it several times and had not been able to do that. So through the donation process, we were able to reach the goal of having them now own it and manage it in the Coastal Wildlife Refuge. Another very exciting accomplishment for us was to receive a municipal entitlement along 100th and Minnesota. Is not quite 10 acre, it's about 9.5 acre parcel that is right at would be the southeast corner of Minnesota and 100th. That has been a municipal entitlement in the settlement for many years, and we were able finally to get the patent for that. So now the municipality owns that, and it is now in the Heritage Land Bank inventory. We've also spent over the last couple of years, but especially last year, pre-development activities at 3rd and Ingra, which is the former Native Hospital site. You'll be seeing the rezone probably next month. We were approved for our rezone by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it will be coming to the Assembly for approval. This allows us, this is the first step to implement our master plan that we've been working on for several years. So this is a very exciting opportunity for us to be able to take that first step. Next slide, Shelley. Some of the potential disposals that we're anticipating is a easement and parking lease out in Eagle River for the Ptarmigan Valley Trail. That will go to, I believe, DNR. We have another Carroll Creek parcel. This is the next parcel to be disposed of, and we have Assembly approval to go ahead and dispose of that. Our bidding instructions are up on our website. Also wanted to report that we are working on the Tozier Tract Exchange. after the Assembly approved the opportunity to lease back the property to them in order to operate there while we go forward on the exchange. We are in the process of starting their conditional use process for them for their permit. And we're working collaboratively with them, with our contractor. So hopefully we'll be able to give you updates routinely on the progress of the Tozier Tract Exchange. We also have another parcel that is also up for sale. And those, if many of you have been involved and kind of watched the Lake Otis and Tudor intersection, the Real Estate Department and Heritage Land Bank, we ended up with, I think, 5 parcels there. It's all into, they're all adjacent. I'm sorry. They're all adjacent. They're all B3, and we're now ready to dispose of those properties for commercial development. So those bidding instructions are also up on our website. And we have an executed letter of intent to purchase the Northwood parcel. This is a 2.5 acre parcel on Northwood for residential units. And hopefully we'll be able to complete that sale this year. Shelley, next. Our projects that we're looking forward to, Section 36 has wetlands, and Heritage Land Bank has maintained that. Much of it has already been transferred to Parks and Rec, but the area with wetlands, which is 2 parcels in Section 36, we're looking at a restoration preservation project for those wetlands to be able to create wetlands mitigation credits. So that is ongoing. We're just starting that process right now. The former Native Hospital site, we're looking at the Urban Sustainability Farm. As many of you know, we are the department that manages the EPA Brownsfield grant. We're in year 2 of 3. We continue to work on our umbrella mitigation formation. We are currently providing mitigation credits by what's called permittee responsible, which is a case-by-case basis, but it's been the goal of our department for a very long time to have an umbrella mitigation bank where it would be much easier and we would have a higher priority for issuing mitigation credits to not only our own projects within the municipality, state projects, and absolutely for private sector projects. We're also assisting, okay, and on to the next. So a couple of things that we're also working on, but I was just going to say we do assist with mitigation, compensatory mitigation needs of all of the other departments along with the private sector. Okay, next. And some of our projects that we may not be driving the bus, we are absolutely very involved in, are the 2 cemetery studies. The process, especially for the Eagle River, we did contract for the site selection through our department. Girdwood was a little farther along than Eagle River, but they are now joining forces so that they meet at the same point in order to consider bonding for the actual development and construction of those 2 cemeteries, but they're well on their way, rather exciting. The Girdwood area plan update, we have been involved because the municipality, HLB, is a major landowner in Girdwood. We've been very involved in this, and Shelley and I attend almost all of the meetings that have anything to do with this. And Assemblyman Middleton, I wanted to announce and let you know that we intend to issue another $10,000 matching grant to the area plan update in order to help them raise money to continue their, to be able to pay for their consultant. They're making headway with consultants, but they certainly need more funding to be able to do that. We're also very involved in the Girdwood Trails and Natural Space Plan. Again, not driving the bus. This is through the Girdwood Trails Committee, but we're very involved and we support them whenever we can. We're also very involved in the Girdwood Housing Working Group. And on our 3rd and Ingra parcel, we will be working on a housing market study. That will be our next step for implementing our master plan. Okay. So a couple of things in our long-term plan. We know that the Ranger Station lease in Girdwood will be coming up for renewal. We're working very collaboratively with them to determine what that next step may be. I know that many of you are aware of the Government Hill parcel that we looked at disposing and realized that we really needed to resolve the issue of the title on the adjacent property before we could go forward with that sale. So that is on hold, and the reason that it's in our 5-year plan. We absolutely want to promote and work on any opportunity for residential development in Girdwood. So we are looking at issuing an RFP to solicit ideas, concepts, interested parties for a public-private partnership in the 2 areas that we have evaluated to be most ready for residential development. So you'll be hearing more about that over the next 5 weeks as we develop and get ready to issue that RFP. And as always, we work very collaboratively with the state, Chugach State Park Superintendent, with our Parks and Rec and with our planning department to always evaluate opportunities for our Chugach State Park access. So at this point, I think I will open it up and Shelley and I will be available to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Ward, for the presentation. All right, so we'll go ahead and turn it over to any questions or comments from members. Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ward, for the presentation and the information.
Actually, Ms. LaFrance, if I could pause you really quick. So I'm hearing a little bit of background noise, so if we could just make sure if you're not speaking that you're muted, please. Thanks. Go ahead, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ward, for the information, and I listened with interest concerning Girdwood, especially the $10,000 for the area plan. That ongoing support has just been so important. Would you speak to the timeline on that money, or when, if it's already been granted, and how that will work? Thanks.
Through the chair, Ms. LaFrance, we've just made the determination that we can afford to do this. We have, I think we're going to have to do an appropriation possibly of we have a capital appropriation that needs to come through HLB, and I think it's part of that. So we're working on the paperwork, but I believe it will take one appropriation. So you will see that come through in the next month.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. It had a couple of questions going through it, if I could, and Felix, you can give me the hook if you want to go down to someone else. There's a comment in one of your parcels off Raspberry for a solar farm. That sounds interesting. What can you tell us who, what, when, where?
I'll give you, through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, this is a concept that is coming forward. We've not made any decisions. It's a fairly lengthy process, but I think I'm going to allow Shelley to kind of give you an update on where this group is in the process. So Shelley, if you want to tell them who it is, what their plans are, and where they are in the process.
Sure, thank you, Robin. Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton. The solar farm concept came to me about 16 months ago from renewable independent power producers. They are the ones that did the pilot project and then the farm in Willow. There are 4 engineers who came over from the oil and gas industry and have really decided to make renewables their focus and try to make it affordable. They're working on several projects throughout the state, but this would be the largest solar farm and utility scale project for them, or really for the state. outside of wind farms. And so we spent about 16 months looking at locations because of the economics of solar farms in Alaska and especially Anchorage. The economics are kind of inverted, whereas elsewhere in the state, land is cheaper, the power purchase rate is actually higher. And so here, land is expensive and the power purchase rate is 6 cents. It's about 2 times that elsewhere. So in order to make those economics work, it needs to be a larger farm. And so we really weeded through, you know, just about every public, private, government-owned, university-owned parcel we could find. And this parcel was originally, of course, you know, slated to be the West Anchorage snow disposal site. It tentatively came available and we proceeded to do some testing out there. We did some pile testing and achieved really great results. So we've started the process to look at how we can partner with them. We've presented to the Sand Lake and Taku Campbell community councils. About 100 people were in attendance at both of those. Mr. Perez Verdia, I think, has seen the presentation several times now. And those 100 people were very supportive. We also have spoken with AEDC and they're supportive. It would be about 9.6 megawatts. That's originally it would be 24,000 solar panels, but the efficiency has increased by about 12% since we looked at those numbers. So the footprint could be smaller. But we're working through issues right now. Planning has determined that would qualify as a utility substation, which is allowed on PLI. They also intend to put in a non-hardened footpath so that the public can continue to enjoy that parcel. They would only be using about half of it. And we're just working through the process. Next step is Watershed and Natural Resources Commission and just gathering the data that allows us to make sure that we would not be doing harm to the wetlands or to any habitat and wildlife in that area. So hopefully that gives you a short, long version of what's going on, and I can send you some information.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. Can I continue, Felix? You want to jump around?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Weddleton.
Okay. This is it's very brief in your description here, but there's a parcel kind of in Mountain View, looks like kind of west side at Mountain View, that you're going to sell, but there's a municipal agency with interest in it and there's a building on it. Is this potential place to store homeless stuff when we abate?
Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, Shelley, is this probably the Porcupine building?
Yes.
Okay. The Porcupine building was a building that was purchased from the state. It's the old oil and gas building. It is across the street from Linden Freight. And we've looked at it for several purposes since the tenant who did workforce training left about a year ago. We've looked at it for other purposes. That is something that has been considered. One of our biggest issues and one of the issues with our homeless population group is when people come to retreat, first of all, there's no easy way to get Mr. Weddleton from the transit stop on Commercial over to this parcel. There's no sidewalks. They have to go almost a block and a half out of their way and around. And you're having them walk on a road that has 18-wheelers with no sidewalks. So it's not pedestrian friendly, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't potentially use that. So our Healthy Spaces program, which is going to be operated through Parks and Rec, knows that they do have the opportunity to use this building in that fashion or some other fashion if they need to.
Okay, good. Thanks. There's You mentioned in there one of your activities is encroachment issues, and just kind of a comment. That's something that the Community Economic Development Committee were just starting to get really information stage on how the city handles things when people encroach. We're mostly looking at different easements, whether it's rights of way or trail easements and so on that homeowners may have infringed on, often unknowingly. But if you have, just have in the back of your mind, if you kind of have written policies on how you deal with that works, just email that to me or the Community Economic Development Committee, just as something, so we'd have, just trying to learn, what does the city do, in those cases? And it sounds like you deal with that somewhat.
Through the chair, Mr. Welton, it does happen. We have thousands of acres in HLB, and so there are some encroachment issues. We try and address those as needed, but we certainly are watching your ordinance and your work on that as it comes through, and we'll certainly work with you and try and give you anything that we can.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Then we get one last thing. I appreciate the Girdwood plan and that you mentioned a couple times in the report and help participate in it. So as you look at the map of Girdwood, it's vastly more HLB land than anything else. You had mentioned just in your presentation that you want to create a mitigation umbrella. And is that, I didn't see that as part of the work plan, but I might have missed it. What's the status of that?
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, we've actually been working on it for a very long time. We actually have the document which creates a mitigation bank. And there's not many mitigation banks in the state. We would be, I think, probably the only one. Great Land Trust is a fee and lieu program. The mitigation bank has the highest priority for issuing those, but it's very complicated. And you have to have certain mitigation sites, so pieces of property that have the right kinds of wetlands those are approved and you just issue the credits right out of the bank itself. We have struggled finding bank sites, and so we've applied for 2 or 3 that just didn't meet their very high criteria. So we're going to continue to work on that, but it really is a long-term goal of ours to not just do on a case, mitigation, compensatory mitigation on a case-by-case basis, but to be able to actually have a bank so that we can issue credits without going back to the Corps every time, which is what we have to do today. So it's a long-term goal.
Oh, I got you. Thanks. I understand it better now. Well, that's good. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Felix.
Thanks. Ms. Zolotel?
Actually, Mr. Weddleton's last question was my question. Thanks.
Thanks. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Robin, I'm wondering what stage into development is the site near the old police headquarters for the potential new bus barn? What stage of development are we in there right now? Thanks.
Through the chair, Mr. Peterson, that's not actually HLB. That's a real estate project, but I'll still give you your update. As you know, because you approved the settlement for the current developer, that the development agreement has been terminated with the DHHS 1 group, which was the group that was working on the full Tudor Elmore development, including the old hospital site or the old DHHS site, and moving the student transportation facility over to the new site that was determined in the site selection process. Today, it's pretty much on hold, although we are continuing to prep it by getting our core permit, which we're in the process of doing right now, and having everything queued up and ready for a conditional use permit. We don't want to have the conditional use permit actually issued because they're only good for 1 year, but we have completed the air quality and the noise studies and most of the work in order to apply for a conditional use permit. And it is our intention to go ahead and continue to work on a Corps of Engineers permit for the wetlands because those are good for 5 years. So we will continue to work on it, but it will be poised and paused until we see if another developer comes in to want to work on the Tudor Elmore development, or there's some other impetus to move those buses to the new student transportation site.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Constant.
So one question and one comment. Robin, the Government Hill lot that the title issues are going kind of are up in the air and still being investigated on. Do you have a sense of the timeline for figuring all that out?
I think, through the chair, Mr. Constant, I think that we're going to be at least another year in order to straighten out the adjacent parcel title, which is very clouded at the moment. We will have to go through a quiet title process, which is a court process, and we fully expect that's going to take about a year. But if we succeed in getting title to that, which we believe we should have title to, the municipality and HOB, then we can move forward. But today that is on hold until we can do that. But it will. We are anticipating at least 1 year.
So recognizing that the market changes, and this is just like pie out of the sky, you know, just a guess, wild a wag. Do you have a sense of how much that property would sell for on the current market?
Through the chair, Mr. Constant, let me ask Shelley if did we receive an appraisal on that parcel, the one that has clear title?
Sure, we did. On 4043D, I believe it was approximately 330, 340, somewhere in there. So adding that additional 1.5 acres could be significant. It would also, you know, make it much easier to develop if they were assembled.
However, Mr. Constant, I do believe that appraisal was probably about a year ago, so it may not reflect the current market.
Yeah, and the market's certainly appreciated somewhat. So, okay, if you were to, and what's the 443D property size?
Good question.
Is it larger or similar to the 1.5 acres?
It is larger. It's the larger part of a trapezoid, I think. Yeah. So over 2.
A rough guess would be $500,000, just as a way. Okay, that's very helpful for me because there are interests in the neighborhood who are not interested in seeing anything built there, and I want to make sure the right thing happens there. So then, second, Robin, you and I have been talking about this, and just want to put it on the record since there are folks here listening from the neighborhood. There's been a long conversation about Track J on the Government Hill Bluff, which is Portland's municipal lands, not Heritage Land Bank lands. And the Neighborhood Community Council on Government Hill requested that the land bank kind of incorporate into its 5-year plan or 1-year work plan kind of stewardship of the process to help ensure that whatever use develops on that land is consistent with providing a buffer between any potential future industrial uses and the neighborhood, because the industrial land abuts directly to the neighborhood. And the long history of that land is that there was a tank farm there that, you know, when I first came to Government Hill, long before I lived here, you couldn't walk through the neighborhood without being kind of swamped in toxic gas smells. And so now that's been corrected and much cleanup has happened. And the neighbors are very interested in finding a use that's compatible on the buffer between whatever industrial use may develop and the neighborhood. And that concept has been developed around the idea of putting in an off-leash dog park on the land, which wouldn't be a tot park and wouldn't have anyone, you know, digging structures into the ground. So all of that is just a predicate to say to the membership and those who are listening that the Heritage Land Bank 5-year plan is not the right place to make an amendment to ask the real estate department to help steward the conversation to ensure that whatever uses land there are compatible, at least in the buffer lands between the neighborhood. And so no motion will come forward today proposed, or no amendment will come forward today proposed for Tuesday that would change the Heritage Land Bank plan in relationship to that. But for the membership, I just need everyone to know that this is a long and abiding concern of the people who live up here that's been going on for the better part of 30 years. So you'll be hearing more about this in the coming months. The overall plan at this time that's developing, so people are aware, is another solar farm. The land area is approximately 480 acres on that plat, or that tract, that lot. And so there's a lot of room to do a bunch of different and interesting things. It'd be a partnership between, I believe, Chugach Electric, the port, and JBear. And so the ownership of the land is ours, but there are restrictions on the title, and it creates a very interesting real estate process. So that all is a long way of saying what I will shortly say is, in the future, you will be seeing a strong effort to put in a neighborhood use on the buffer of the lands between the industrial zone and a project that might develop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, thanks again for the presentation and look forward to the deliberation on Tuesday. With that, I'll go ahead and close this work session, and I will see everyone again at 12:10.